You think that the harder you work, the more you should achieve. So Kobe doing what he did and being the type of player he was, kind of showed that, hey, all that work paid off. But on the flip side, working all the time means that you do nothing but work. The start of the vision is too small. We want a car versus wanting a car dealership.
That's the point. We're so busy thinking about getting the car that we don't realize it's going to take the same time to get the whole dealership. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. We are back virtual. Good morning, fellas. How y'all doing?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. So today, for those people who have saw the intro, the title, the thumbnail, we're talking about a very significant, we're talking about an idea, and there was a significant character who kind of was like the champion of this. And I'm talking about Kobe Bryant. So Kobe, there's a speech that he gave a long time ago, like when he was a kid, teenager, 1996 it was. And he spoke to this class, and he was pretty much telling everybody that on the weekends while he was in high school, he would go to the gym. Saturday, he going to the gym. Sunday, he going to the gym. While other players go hang out after practice, he might go back to the gym. If they go it's morning and it's early and they just had a game last night, he's going back to the gym. If they just won the championship, he's trying to find out when the soonest he could get back into the gym. That was Kobe. That was Kobe's work ethic. And his work ethic is pretty much like unmatched in society today. Like you really don't find people who work as hard as Kobe worked. But the thing that I kind of want to talk about today is how that mindset, although it is good, if you take it kind of out of the context of what he did, it can lead you in the wrong direction. Listening to Kobe, I believe, can make you broke.
Wow, that's pretty strong. So listening to Kobe can make you broke. In that respect you're talking about.
In that respect. Initial thoughts.
No, initial thought is it's kind of counterintuitive. You think that the harder you work, the more you should achieve. So I think, Kobe doing what he did and being the type of player he was, kind of showed that, hey, all that work paid off and that, hey, it must work. But on the flip side, and look, Kobe's, not here to discuss this. I mean, I wonder the older Kobe, what he would say to the younger Kobe about that. But working all the time means that you do nothing but work. And what happens to your other relationships? That's the thing that comes to my mind. What happens to your other interactions? Do you lose contact with other people? Do they just become, just 5 minutes of your day? That's what comes to my mind initially.
So I think the concept, I totally understand. I get it. And I think we have to provide a little context behind this. Kobe happened to be working all of the time in a sport, in a career that he made multi-million dollars from. So if you're just looking at the monetarily gain from exchanging his time for the amount of money that he received, I mean, in his line of work, which is the very, very small portion of the world, I could see where he was going. Now, the challenge and the issue is 98% of the world doesn't work in a field like that where they're exchanging their time and having multi-million dollars return.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because the issue is not working hard. I think we all believe in hard work. The issue is kind of like what you were saying, Rodney, where if you have no balance, that's not necessarily a true recipe to be successful.
Yeah, I think that too. So yes, definitely the context is important, and that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to talk about in this, because but also too, and this. So first, let me touch on the balance part. There's the context is all wrong. If you go on YouTube right now and you type in like Kobe motivation, actually I can literally tell you exactly what shows up. Kobe motivation. And what you will see is a ridiculous amount of the Mamba mentality. Give it your all. Unbroken. The mindset of a winner. The greatest speech ever. Fear of fit. So ridiculous amounts of motivational stuff about how you can just go all in on it. But the thing is, so if we're talking about business, just because I specifically said that listening to Kobe too much could possibly be making you broke. The reason that I say that in terms of like business and work is because if I am so focused on taking the free throw every single day, I'm taking the free throw, right? Or I'm so focused on putting in the maximum amount of time and I'm priding myself on the amount of time that I'm spending on the work, then where I pat myself on the back is in the wrong spot. I think we gotta define like what work is, like what is actual work, because the thing is, if I say, and I call this like the white van mentality. If I've been a guy who say I'm a plumber, right? I'm a plumber. I started a plumbing business. My first client was my aunt. Boom, she told my uncle. Boom, and my uncle, he introduced me to his friends. Cool, I've got a plumbing business. So I drive a white van and I got all of my equipment in the back. I've been driving it for the last 30 years. And so with my white van, I've done nothing but, instead of going and getting a job, I have then created a job for myself. And now, because I got that Mamba mentality, I'm going to wake up early, go plumb as much as I possibly can. And at the end of the day, I'm going to finish my plumbing to do the same thing the next day. The issue with this is I've been doing the same thing for 30 years. In basketball, I could possibly have gotten better. In plumbing, yes, I've gotten really great at plumbing, but my business has not grown. I'm still making the same amount that I was most likely making in the beginning. Or I've got a handful more of referrals, or there's more people who know about me, I guess. So, I can always get a call to work, but my business has not grown and I have not been able to remove myself from certain things. So I'm still doing the same thing every single day, putting the same amount of effort in every single day. And so after a certain amount of time, I move into a different season of life, but the requirement of my time and energy has not changed because I have not done anything different. So in this context, it does not work.
No, I'm glad you shared that. And I don't know if plumber is plumb, but I might deal with contractors all the time, but I don't know if they
I think they do plumb. They say, they plumb.
Okay. I never heard that before.
Plumber's plumb, roofer's roofing,
Yeah, roof.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's good to kind of frame it that way. And maybe it's a good counterbalance to the Kobe piece. So Kobe talked about, I'm going to get back to the plumber. He had the talent and skills that work paid off, meaning that he worked on things and he got better at them because he had a lot of talent and he had a lot of skill. And he had a mentality and a plan. I mean, that's the other part of it. He had to have a plan. The example you talked about with the plumber is like, hey, I'm going to work hard doing my job, doing plumber jobs, and I'm just doing back to back every day, all day. And to your point, the same level and all that, but if there's no plan associated with that work or no skill associated with that work, because you can have a bad plumber too. You can have a bad anything and you can work hard all day long. I mean, I could go out and say I'm gonna be a skier and I'm gonna work hard as I can to be the best skier in the world every day, all day. But if I don't have the skill or the gift to ski, I will never advance. So it's hard. There has to be hard work to a certain level attached with your skill, and also there needs to be some type of plan associated with that on where you want to go and how you want to get there.
Also, too, like on the point that you started off with, the thing that you touched on when you first started is Kobe can go and shoot a basketball and make millions of dollars. If you plumbing, chances are, if your hand is actually going into the toilet, you are not getting paid $1 million. That's almost guaranteed. There is no $1 million.
Not for that job. Not for that job.
No, not for that job.
But maybe for your skill set. But I'm gonna let Mike. I know Mike like he's ready to get in here.
Yeah. So I wanna take a little bit of different vantage point, because this is something that I've thought about. I study a lot with contractors. I deal with them a lot, right? The thing that comes to mind is just the word team and collaboration. Because if we have 5 guys and we're all thinkers and we're not really working extremely hard, but we're thinking about all these good ideas, but we don't have the people with the expertise to execute, because we're not plumbers, we're not carpenters, we're not drywallers, but we have the ideas, we have the mindset, but we don't have the tradesmen, because it's the actual thing. Like, we're in a generation where everything did flip. The generation that came behind me, they were taught everybody should be entrepreneurs. The reality is everybody is not meant to be entrepreneurs. Most people, in fact, need leadership and guidance. And we need plumbers to plumb. We need electricians to do electrical work. We need drywallers to do what they do, because if you literally have usually one guy at the top of the organization, he gets paid for his thoughts, his ideas, he's bringing in business. When you get the business, you need the skills meant to actually complete the work. I love a plumber that all he does is plumb. Because the thing is, you could have a guy working on repiping a house. It's taking him 2.5 weeks. He can't figure out certain things. I bring in another guy. I pay him 3 times what I'll pay the other guy. He gets it done in 4 hours. The job is done, because I'm not paying him for the hours. I'm paying for his expertise. So I want to tie that back into, if you have a plumber where all he does is plumb, you actually can make a really good amount of money, especially right now, because there's such a severe shortage, because we don't have a lot of the guys that actually want to do it and have that skill set. So not to go against what the theme is, because I do believe in balance. So I want to make sure that's clear. You need to have balance, but I think you have to have a team in place. You have to be willing to collaborate with people, and you need a thinker. You need a thinker that's going to have the ideas and kind of put people in the best place for their skill sets.
So what you were talking about right now, I believe, is leverage. So there's the person who is, for example, so there's how I'll put it like this. There's this book I'm reading. It's called Marketing to the Affluent by Dan Kennedy. He's like the godfather of marketing information. And so in this book, he starts it off pretty much by making his argument for why you should be targeting the affluent as your customers versus anybody else, especially not the middle class. And pretty much his argument was stating that, like, people who are the people who are poor, there's only an X amount of money that they have to do anything else, and it's not very much. The rest of it is for necessities. The middle class, there's this similar percentages here, but they've got more expendable income. But as soon as something happens in the economy, the biggest difference between the middle class and then the affluent, the people who are, making the most and achieving the highest results, the biggest difference is what they do when crisis strikes, right? So we got the middle class who something happens in the economy or something happens with the company that they're at, and now they are in a situation where they gotta figure something out. So what they do is they batten down the hatches, and then they decide that, okay, these are my necessities, and I'm going to cut some of these expenses. We're not going to go out to eat so many times. We're not going to, go maybe we're not going to go vacation this year. Maybe we're not going to buy a new suit for that particular wedding. We're going to just, we're going to keep what we got, and we're going to keep on moving forward. And then they say, okay, so now I'm going to pick up another job, or say I'm going to start working here on the weekends, or I'm going to start doing this thing online to make a couple extra dollars. And they start to trade that time for money. And we only have 24 hours. You're not going to have any more time than anybody else. And so, but the affluent, what they do is they just create. If there is, and so since they have this expendable income here, and if there is an issue where they do need to start making more in a certain area or whatever happens, they just create something and then use the leverage that they have so that that thing can be producing, so that they don't have to spend so much of their time for it to be producing. And so the reason that I say that is because when we get into this mindset of like, I'm trying to work all of the time, like I'm literally trying to work all the time, then I kind of cap myself off and limit myself to what I can do with my time versus how much I can get out of my time. Because I think the next level after, I'm just really good at this thing, because, and I'll talk about the seasons. We've talked about the seasons before. After the level of I'm really good at this thing is that team part. But a lot of people don't think about that team part. They don't think about how I can leverage somebody else, or how I can, use what I've built up from me being so good at this thing to expand what I'm doing or expand my operation. We just think of, okay, so if I need to make more, I guess I'll just have to put in more time to do it. But God created us to be creative. We're in his image. Like the first thing that he told us about him in the beginning, God created. That's the first thing he let us know about what he does. And so we were meant to be creative as well. And so, yes, I definitely agree though too, that like everybody is not meant to be the CEO. Most people will die of anxiety from running the whole operation. Like, and that's the reality of it. But I think what people have to keep in mind is like, after there's a certain things that you will not be able to do when you're 75 years old. How did you leverage your skill set, your gifts, your faith? How did you leverage your work so that you can get more out of your time, to where at 75, you don't need to go ahead and put on your suit, load up the truck, get on in it, drive 25 miles to go hit up this property, this property, this property, this property, this property, so that you can stay afloat.
But that goes, I think, just seeing you kind of go through that, even going back using Kobe as an example, again, there's a time where we have to put the work in, right? Let's be honest. There's times where you have to do the grind. And that might be a period of time when you are working all the time for a period of time. But in your mind, you got to know that, hey, this is a period. This is not going to be every day, all day. It's unsustainable. So and I'm doing, since Kobe was brought up, he grinded out all while he could, right? When he was in the NBA. At some point, he had to retire. His work could not keep him from the fine age.
He could not do it.
No, and I think that's true with, you talk about the plumber, you talk about anybody who's doing something, the CEO or whatever. Everyone got that story where they put that grind in, they hated that work, they slept at the office, they did all these different things for a period of time. But at some point, you have to the point about the creativity you're talking about, I call it creativity associated with a plan. You got to there has to be some type of change, and something has to happen that you don't have to put the same amount of time in to get the same amount of output. You know what I mean? In order to be sustainable.
Yeah. I think essentially the goal, if we're talking about like you putting together, you're working, Rodney, I think it's really important what you just said, because I think you essentially were saying you need to be very intentional about the work that you're doing. Because like, if I already know in advance that I'm going into a season where I need to work really hard, like I have to wake up 3-4 o'clock and I'm going to sleep late and I'm putting in these 12-14 hour days. I know that. Like, I know that in advance, and I know that it's also not going to last forever because it's a part of the plan. So I have some things that I can look at, some things that I'm measuring, my KPIs, so that I know when I need to move into the next season, because there's a result that I'm looking for. So it's like, what I'm saying is the issue that people are running into is they don't understand that plan part that you just mentioned there. It's just all work.
Yep. Yeah. I think one of the main issues also in our culture specifically is, and it's kind of like the theme that I'm been thinking of just in life and just for this topic also is we don't fully embrace that team environment enough, right? Because if you're doing your role and your job, you don't have to do the 5 other roles. And what I see a lot of times in our culture specifically is based on our programming and our trust levels and our control issue, we being honest, like it comes down to some control. We don't put people in the proper places to be on the team. And then when we do have them, we don't fully trust them to do their job based
Micromanage.
on programming, micromanaging and stuff like that. And one thing I can definitely say, dealing with certain like trades, for example, let's go back to the contractor thing, roofers, I'll say like our Brown brothers, they do a lot of team. Like they always say, listen, what do you need? You know, I have a cousin that does this. I have a cousin that does this. Or even if they're doing the roof, it'll be 10 of them on the roof. Versus when I see some of, you know, our brothers, it's like, man, I can't find good help. You know, so-and-so ran off for me, you know. And it's like, man, what is going on? But what I realize is a lot of this is a product of our programming. And we really have to challenge like everything. We got to rewrite the mental software in order for us to see it differently. Because the thing is, if we have 10 people working towards the same goal in different capacities, nobody has to work 24 hours a day. You know what I'm saying? And we have, well, because I don't trust anybody to do their job, I feel like I have to work 24 hours a day, where even if I do put people in place, I have to micromanage them. Like you just said, I don't trust them to do their job. So I'm doing my job and I'm also trying to do their job.
Yep.
So I think, so I'm going to ask you a question about that programming and the team aspect. Before that, I want to go back to Rodney's point about the plan. So question, how are you guys kind of conceptualizing, putting together a plan to where you can do more with your time, which is essentially doing more in less time rather than just working all day, every day, forever? How are you putting together that plan?
Well, I think and the two go hand to hand, because the team concept that Mike brought up, because at least in my mind, let's put it like that, my plan, and, you know, and I'm talking about age and everything else, you know, I'm at that point where I'm looking to do a transition from where I've been doing from a work life standpoint to something else. And even from a ministry like standpoint to something else. And yeah, Sherry and I can work, and we are working a lot in the ministry independently, but we have to grow the team and we have to grow individuals in order to have the ministry actually truly grow in the way it needs to grow. So it's emboldened upon us to make sure that we, you know, when we identify people, that we help to train them, get them in their gifts, and have them working towards what they can do versus us trying to do everything ourselves. Now, shifting to the what I call corporate America work, it's like the plan is that, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. What's the you know, retirement is not something I want to do. So what's my plan? And I do have a plan. It's like, okay, I need to do several things to get myself in that position, market myself in a different way, and do a different job. In my mind, it's not going to require me spending, you know, X amount of hours every day, all day doing this. You follow me?
Yeah.
And it's laying it out and then learning, talking to people, getting educated on it. So that plan has to include a vision of what you want to be. You know what I mean? That's where it starts. And then you have to find out, what does it take to get to that vision?
Yeah. Gosh. So for me, it's funny. I can think of a specific conversation that kind of embodies what we're talking about. I was having a conversation with a gentleman that I used to play football with back in college, and come to find out, like, you know, he's had a lot of success as a real estate developer, and we were just having a conversation, and I was trying to asked his background, like kind of like, how did you get like from here to there? Like, how did you get started? I started talking about single family homes. Like, did you have, 20 single family homes? And he kind of just, he let me talk, and he's like, you know what? I never really played in that space. He was like, I went straight to a large commercial building and I made it work. He was like, it was very difficult, very challenging, but I made it work. And once I made it work, I had proof of concept, and I wasn't going to go back. Like, I wasn't going to go down to a smaller unit. I just kept going up. So now, you have 500 unit apartment complexes, but it was just because of where I started. It really kind of made me reflect on my programming, because I'm like, man, you know what? Even if you have 20, 25 single family homes, for each house to get it rehab, crewed up, rented out, go through that whole process, it's a lot of it takes a lot of energy and effort for each house. And the one thing that he said to me was, he's like, listen, like, it takes very similar amount of energy and effort to do large deals as it does to do small deals. But the challenge is, in our community, those large numbers kind of startle us. And so we tend to think smaller because that's what we've been exposed to. Everybody knows a guy like, oh, he may have bought a few houses, or even if he bought a lot of houses, it's still like, all right, I can spend 10 years working on 20, 25 houses, or I can spend 5 years working on a 30-unit apartment complex. And so and that's the difference between a real estate investor versus a real estate developer. And so when I think about just life, it's like, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to just spend a lot of time, energy, and effort for a small gain? Like, for example, like mentorship. We can just work on, 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kids, or we can bring in more qualified people, train them, and roll out the program to multiple schools and be able to impact triple the amount. But it all starts from the way that we think, our programming, and our plan that we put in place.
I love what you just said, because it's like, when we think about that plan, and I guess this goes onto the programming point too. We, for whatever reason, maybe the people we were around, how we grew up, what we've been able to see, our level of exposure has a lot to do with the programming as well. But like, we put together these plans, and it's like, okay, so I'm trying to make $1 million. So I'm going to sell a book for $25. And then if you do the math, you're going to have to sell a lot of books. Or it's like, okay, let me just try to, so I'm going to go get a job, right? And then if they give me like $45 an hour, I'm killing it, right? I can go get that car that I want. I can go live at that place that I want to live at. And then boom. So now you're going to be working 40 hours a week. You're going to get that $45 an hour. You've made it. If that was your definition, if that was the end goal that you came for, then you made it. Congratulations. But don't expect anything different. Don't try to do anything different. And don't tell them that you don't want to give them 40 hours, because then that's going to be a problem. But it's like, it's going to take, if we're talking about entrepreneurship or anything else, we all have the same 24 hours and 7 days of the week. So it's like, but there's a huge difference between the person who from 18 to 65, they became a billionaire, versus the person from 18 to 65, they became a 6-figure earner, or they became a 7-figure earner. And it's like, what's the difference? We talked about this briefly before. It's the same time. And like Mike said, you could be in the same field doing the same work, but someone was doing more high leverage activities versus the other person who wasn't. If I'm trying to get to $1 million, I can put together a product that costs $2,000, and let's do the math real quick. $1 million divided by 2,000. I need to sell 500,000 of this thing, which is a lot of work. Selling anything 500,000 times is a lot of work. Or what if I build up enough skill and expertise in the area to solve a $1 million problem and make the person who I do it for $10 million. Now I can charge $1 million and I made $1 million in a day. That's a different way of thinking, but it's the same time. I just need to put a little bit more into the thought and then develop the skill. It takes a little bit more patience on the other side. Mike, you talked about building a team around you to kind of leverage that so you can do more with the same amount of time. How do you go about building that team? Like, what are the key players? What's the mindset? What are you thinking when in your planning phase? How are you making that happen?
I think the first thing is you have to understand where you're trying to go. So you have to have a plan in place. You have to have some brainstorm. You have to have a clear vision. Once you have a clear vision, then you have to identify, okay, what are the skill sets that are needed to accomplish that? Like, for example, for me, I know for any project, I need a good roofer. Well, I'll probably need 3 of everything, first of all, because in my business, that's just how it goes. So I need 3 viable roofers. I need 3 viable plumbers. I need 3 viable electricians. I need a couple handymen that can kind of, do a little bit of everything. I need some painters. Some of these skill sets, they cross over. You may have one guy that he can actually do 3 of these skill sets, right? And so what I identify, and it's funny because I had these discussions a lot with one of my real estate buddies that we always talk houses, and he's old school. He likes to be like in the midst because of past experience. He's like, listen, if I'm not watching these guys, they're not going to do it perfect. And I'm like, all right, listen, even if you're watching these guys, they're not going to do it perfect. But you know what I'm saying? Because if you're sitting there, you spend 4 hours watching a guy rewire and install a furnace, it's like, how much more productive were you, just because you were looking over his shoulder? We have different, but we work well together because he makes me think about details, and I kind of get him to think about a little, higher level thinking as far as a conglomerate versus just this single house. So to go back to your question, main thing is just, like I said, you got to have a clear vision of where you're trying to go, and you have to identify the skill sets. One thing that I had to realize with myself too, instead of constantly focusing on what I didn't have, like, man, I need this, I don't really have that, I started paying attention to the people that were already in my circle. I get a ton of people that reach out to me just, hey, if you have any work, give me a call, or, hey, I'm looking to learn more about investing, I would love to sit down. And before, I didn't look at them as potential team members. But now I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, let's put that on the calendar. Let's sit down and let's just see if it makes sense for us to work together in some capacity. That's a big thing. Just the people that you have already in your constant wavelength, pay attention. God's put people in place for a reason.
Definitely. So just putting a bow on this conversation, it takes me to 1 Corinthians 12. For as the body is one and hath many members, and all the members of that body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. We always talk about, like, everybody's got a role, everybody's got a position, and everybody's got a purpose for their life. But inside of the kingdom, we all are working for the same purpose. Like, it's one body. So when you talk about a team, you got different players in different positions, all working as one to achieve the end goal. And so I think both conversations are very important. And so just to wrap this up, I want to ask you guys another question. It's like, if we're with the context of the Kobe situation that we were talking about, if we're summarizing all points, if I'm a man who I've, been doing something for the same thing for the last 40 years, right? 30, 40 years, 25 years. And it's been working. And, people know me for this thing, but I don't really have much leverage, much flexibility. There really isn't a team built. But I'm come-ish comfortable-ish, but I know I'm in a transition period where I need to move to that next level or that next phase of life, and I got to do different things or else it just won't work. I won't get the same results anymore because I physically won't be able to do that. What should I be thinking? Practical steps. And how could I go about that, summarizing the points that you guys already laid out?
You want to go, Mike? Want to dive in that first?
So practical steps, I think that you definitely have to be doing some investing. You gotta squirrel away some things and think in the future. Don't just think about $1 today. Compound interest is a wonderful thing if you utilize it. So definitely start getting with some type of financial expert and have some type of investing, you know, whether it's a 401k, a Roth IRA, whatever it is, you know, just talk to somebody that's a specialist. Then I think the next area is just think about where you want to be in 10, 15 years. And you know, we'll just kind of reverse engineer it. If you want to have a team, like you want to be the leader of an organization, start building out the organization. But I think a lot of people have to be real with themselves, man. Like if you're not the type of person that, you know, you're not comfortable with any type of confrontation, whether it be healthy or any type of way, you're not comfortable with, you know, managing people is just something that you don't like doing. You're not good with schedules. You're not good with payroll. Like you may be better suited to be a part of a team, which is nothing wrong with that. Like I really want to stress that issue because I see a lot of people, especially like the younger generation, like everybody wants to be the leader of the organization. What, you know, a lot of people just don't realize is you can have 100% of nothing, or you can have, let's say, 25% of something that's great because you're a part of a team. You may be the entrepreneur, you may be running your own thing, but if you're not yielding any results, then what is it even worth?
Yeah, no, that's all good stuff. And I think the only thing I maybe throw in there is that, you know, somebody threw this out at me one time and I never really thought about this. You got to know what your superpowers are. And it kind of goes on what you talked about, Mike. You got to know who you are and what your limitations are, your tolerance for stuff. So, but knowing what your superpowers are, what you're good at. I mean, are you a people person? You know, are you gifted in some area? And, you know, just make sure whatever you're going towards that is going to, you know, capitalize on your superpower. And where you're deficient at, you got to decide, okay, are you going to go and work on those things and make them better? Or are you just going to say, hey, that's just who I am? Because that's going to dictate where you go. And then set up a vision that's bigger than you, I mean, because in my mind, one thing I've learned, my visions were too small. And my thing is that once I start to think bigger and say, hey, I want to do this, I'm looking at this, it's easier to trim it back down. But when you start too small, it's harder to build it back up, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? If you get where I'm coming from, it's like you need to think big enough to say, hey, I want to go, I'm going to knock down that mountain. Now, you might get to that mountain and realize, man, I'm not going to be able to knock it all down, but I can maybe attack these areas. You follow me? So I think sometimes the start of the vision is too small. We're too like immediate. We want a car versus wanting a car dealership, you know?
That's the point. There it is right there. We're so busy thinking about getting the car that we don't realize it's going to take the same time to get the whole dealership. And we just got to we got to invest a little bit more time up here instead of using these to do stuff. I get it. Cool. Well, fellas, I think we have a lot of good points in this episode. We have the plan. We said set the vision, backtrack, reverse engineer that so that you can execute on that to get it. But before you start executing, make sure that you want to have a God-sized vision because God gave you potential to do amazing things. I think that's part of the reason why he says he's able to do more than you can ever think and imagine because most likely you're gonna think too small. And God gave you the ability to do a lot. And so it's like making sure that vision is big enough to where you're almost like, you can't fully know how to accomplish all of it. Now faith comes in. You just have to start. You can start where you are, move, and then God will come in and start to help you out with the rest of the details of getting there. And I believe that's how, I just believe that's how we're supposed to do life.
Yeah.
But thank you guys. I think everybody, if you haven't already heard about, there's a fabulous group. Y'all know where I'm going. Men 2.0. The information is in the description. It's absolutely the place that you want to be. We've got a bunch of high achievers. We've also got a bunch of people who will help you to think bigger and think more of yourself than you probably do. I mean, I have a lot of conversations, and I hate when people say the word can't. Like it kind of really bothers me. Like I don't know, but it kind of really bothers me. And I'm like, you've limited yourself, but in your limiting yourself, you've kind of limited what God can do through you. And so now you can't possibly be who God called you to be because of the own barrier that you set up in your own mind. And so we got a group of people who are sharpening each other, building each other up, getting better in their marriages, getting better in their work, getting better in their relationships with other people, and getting better in every area of life. So we definitely want you to be a part of it if that sounds like something that you want to be a part of. Information is below. And with that, thank you for being here. And if you like this episode, you're going to like this one on your screen. And we'll see y'all there.
Peace.